Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mumey, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. It is Wednesday, May 15th. Glad to have everybody with us, muted or unmuted. And Tracey's here with me today, and thank you for unmuting me. I appreciate that.
You bet.
I gave you too much power in there, I could tell.
All you have to do is say,
There you go. We're at about 80 days until the July 2024 bar exam, and we're glad to have all of you with us live or on replay. We have some fairly significant breaking news coming in from California today. We're going to talk about that. There is a lot happening in the bar exam world, and we're going to take some student questions and talk a little bit about that. And then Tracey, you're going to talk about something called a kite with no tail. Is that correct?
that's right.
Okay. Which is not to be confused with a horse with no name. I want to start by just talking a little bit about our virtual boot camp that we held last weekend. And it was a lot of fun. It was really a great event. We had Tracey was there, June was there, Amanda, myself, and it was really a terrific experience, don't you think?
I think so. I think the students got a lot out of it. I think they made connections with each other, which said was very important. And some connections were made that are hard to make in a compartmentalized fashion. You put it all together, things flowed, and several of the students said, "Oh, okay, now I understand how photo reading is important for my essay writing and essay writing so important in my mind maps and so forth." And then we had the additional experience of learning about the superego and doing a little bit of work with that.
Yeah. And one of the highlights for me was that we got to do a couple of interviews with former students who were successful on the bar exam. And it was really great to hear their stories. I thought these were a couple of individuals who had taken and not been successful for many years, in some cases, 12 years in one case, and then came to us, did what we asked, employed photo reading and mind mapping and FLA and selective intuition, and Shazam, they passed. But really terrific stories from them.
Compelling, tear jerking in at least one case, if not both. There's no experience like lived experience. And for these two gentlemen to be vulnerable enough to come on and talk about their failures and their success and to allow us to enjoy both with them was quite extraordinary.
Yeah, we were really excited about that. After the boot camp, we sent out a survey to the boot campers. And if you're a boot camper and you've not filled out the survey, we would ask you to do that. But the results that came back, I was really pleased with. Everyone that replied with the highest rating for the event, for the instructors, for what they got out of it. And I don't think that's gratuitous. I really felt like people were making great improvement in their writing, in their performance tests, in their MBEs, certainly in learning how to photo read and mind maps. You never get back uniformly positive responses when you ask for that kind of feedback. And in this case, we did. So one of the comments that came back from one of the boot campers was, we said, what do you think what comments would you have? And somebody said, you need to do more of these, right? Keep your eyes and ears open. We are going to make some announcements in the next couple of weeks. We're taking that message to heart. I thought that it was really, people came really prepared, didn't they? They really came in, they worked hard, and you could see the results at the end of a couple of days. It was pretty exciting.
That's true. We gave people an opportunity to write an essay and then have me critique it and then write it again and have me look at it again. And I provided written critique the second time. And I really saw some bright lights there, some aha moments, some people getting it. But I think practice makes perfect. And what it helped us identify for these students is what they need going forward, which is what I'm going to be talking about a little later this hour. I think it's so important to have the feedback. And you're right, it's not gratuitous. We don't want to just get a pat on the back. We know we do good work. But what we really want to know is how our teaching connected with the students' needs. and it appeared to connect with them quite well. And I was very happy to see that. Like to see more participants because I think the experience is unmatched anywhere in the bar review preparation world.
Yeah, I agree. And so if you weren't with us on boot camp, you'll have another opportunity to do that. We're going to announce some dates coming up shortly. And for those who attended, thank you and excited and pleased that you joined us. Now, coming out of that boot camp, when we finished the boot camp, Tracey and I got together and we were talking about just breaking down the experience as we often try to do, evaluating and saying what went well, what can we improve. And one of the things that we continue to see is that there just isn't any substitute for coaching when it comes to the writing, essays or performance tests. Now, we have an essay writing workshop and we have a performance test workshop. Tracey does the essay writing workshop. Amanda does the performance test workshop. And these are really useful tools, but they're one-offs. They're not the continuity that you need in looking at multiple pieces of writing over a little bit longer period of time. And as we considered and looked at our student roster, one of the things that we became aware of is that a large number of our students opt for what we call our basic course, which does not include personal writing critiques. And we understand that, and we didn't want to overprice and oversell and offer something that people didn't need. But the reality is that almost everyone that gets that kind of coaching sees their scores go up. And the goal obviously is to get into the passing zone. And it's certainly easier to do that with coaching than not with coaching. As we talked about it in one of those aha moments, I think it wasn't Tracey an aha moment, we said, what if we, for a short time, offered the opportunity to anyone that's in the basic program right now with us to add 5 personal coaching calls and price it at only $300. And that's what we've decided to do. That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
It is and it isn't. It really came out of the experience of one of the 2 successful students that came and talked to the group on Saturday. And he had indicated that he had a very short time to prepare for the exam. And one of the things he did was buy just a short number of coaching calls with Jackson. And working intensively with Jackson, he said, was probably the biggest thing that got him over the hump on the essay portion. Having the one-on-one contact, seeing his progression in his writing, he said that he probably wouldn't have passed again without that personal attention. And that's really, as we were sitting over a Coke and some onion rings, that we really remarked on was how important that could be to our students to just have these intensive sessions, 5 of them in quick succession for a very low price.
These 5 calls would cost you $1,250 with me,
Yeah.
or $1,000 with Tracey. And we recognized that particularly if you're retaking the exam, that's an expense. And so what we decided to do was, for a limited time, because we don't know how much capacity we have, we just don't know what the demand will be. For a 10-day period, you have, if you're already registered in the course, the opportunity to upgrade and add 5 coaching calls with me or with Tracey. And it's pretty much your choice who you want to work with. And there's no pride here. There's a little bit of competition, sibling comp. There's no pride. We're both glad to work with you. And you get these 5 calls for $300, which is ridiculously low priced, because we just think it makes that big a difference. So to take advantage, this is literally first come, first serve. We think there's a possibility that we could really get a ton of people choosing to do this. And we may have to shut this off if we just don't have the capacity to take the calls. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, you should do it today. I wouldn't wait. We've already gotten a number of registrations, but you sign up, you pick the coach that you want. You can pay over time. I think Klarna and Afterpay are both offering 4 payments of $75 each. So monthly payments. So really not terribly expensive at all. And then we can start working on your writing now, 80 days before the exam. I always get anxious and a little bit frustrated when people wait until the last 30 days and then say, I'm going to work on my writing. It's been my experience that writing improvement, while it can happen dramatically, is much better if you've got some time to practice and put it into effect. So it's not the optimum or the ideal. That's why we're doing this now. So I've sent out an email.
Let me just insert here. If you're trying to think about it, Jackson's approach is going to be from that of a law professor, and he is going to work on your FLA from that set of lens. And he's pretty hard on you, and that's his MO. He doesn't play around, and I respect that very much. Mine is more practical because I practice law and have practiced for 42 years. 33 of those years, I practiced as a court judge, and I'm going to come at it from the perspective of being both a practicing attorney and a practicing court judge. And so my way of helping you write is more practical in that way. Both have their strengths, both have maybe their sweet spots, and maybe some of we could incorporate some of each other's styles. But when you're deciding on your coach, that's really what you're looking at. Jackson charges more for his work because he's got a lot more experience in this bar review area. But we decided to just make it 300 across the board for either one of us. But that may help you decide who you want to work.
If you need the link and you can't find the email that we sent, shoot an email to me or to June, and we will send that right out to you so that you can go ahead and get signed up. And as soon as you sign up, you'll get the link. You can start sending your first call in or your first piece of writing, and we'll talk about performance tests or essays or both. If you're listening to this or watching this and you're not yet a Celebration Bar Review student, what you will find is that within our basic success course, we have now included 5 coaching calls within that course, and that course price is now $2,500. Again, you can pay over time with Klarna, Firm, or Afterpay. But all of our courses now going forward will include at least 5 coaching calls. There's also the opportunity to do video critiques, and that's something different, but you can check that out as well. So we really want to see as many of you as possible take advantage of this coaching. We think it'll make a difference. We know it does make a difference, and we've tried to reduce every possible barrier that we can. So that's what's going on. Hope you'll jump in and sign up for that right away. Next thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the California news, just wanted to let you know that we really appreciate having Google reviews of Celebration Bar Review. And if you are an existing student in the course, we would be very appreciative if you typed Celebration Bar Review into your Google search bar. When you do that, you will see up on the screen a business listing that we've added fairly recently. And there's an opportunity there to leave a 1 to 5 star rating and write a quick review. And we would so appreciate you giving us a quick review. I know everybody and their brother wants reviews these days, and they want evaluations and surveys. I know it becomes, for me at least, it feels a little overwhelming. This is really important in the sense that there are a lot of people out there that could really be served and benefited by this course who just don't know about it. And so when you put up that Google review, you really help spread the word, and it's much appreciated. We hope you'll do that. It'll only take you a couple of minutes. Just go to your Google search bar at Celebration Bar Review, and you'll see the opportunity to leave a rating and a review. So thank you for that. All right. Now let's get to the really crazy news. And I want to preface all this by saying nothing is set in stone at this moment. There are some big events happening over the next couple of days. Let me give you the overview, and then Tracey and I'll try to dig into this a little bit. As many of you in 2026 on to 2028, the National Conference of Bar Examiners, the people that write the current bar exam, the multi-state and the essays and the MPT, have made the decision to go to a completely different form of exam called the Next Generation Bar Exam. Tracey and I have talked about that. We've done some videos. If you're interested in finding out more about it, we've got that up there. That's still a few years away, and it's going to be a different kind of exam. The multi-state bar exam, the 200-question multiple choice test, is going away. Not going to be offered by the NCBE after 2028, I believe is the transition point. I think right now we have 18 jurisdictions that have signed up for the Next Generation exam. None of them are particularly large jurisdictions yet. We don't have any really big states that have signed into this program. It's mostly the smaller states that rely, I think, more heavily on NCBE. We have been waiting for some time to see what would happen in California, Florida, Texas, and New York. Those 4 states in particular, although not exclusively, but Those are the four that really drive a big part of the number of bar takers nationally. We haven't heard from any of them until the last few days. And in the last few days, in the state of California, a proposal surfaced that is going to be voted on by in California, they've got a board of trustees and the board of bar examiners, and it's a complicated scenario. But in any event, there's a decision-making body in California that has a proposal in front of it that would replace the existing multi-state bar exam with a multiple choice test written by the Stanley Kaplan Company. Just let that sink in for a minute. The proposal says that they want to start that test in February of 2026. So in 2 exams from
February 2020.
I'm sorry, February 2025. Yes, February 2025, 2 exams from now, which is staggering. It seems incomprehensible to me. No, again, want to just be clear. They haven't voted yet. They could reject it. They could change it, but that's what we're looking at as we report today. Now, what this means, as we understand it currently, is that the existing multi-state bar exam would be removed from the California bar, and it would be replaced with a privately created new multiple choice test. We don't know how many questions. We don't know what subjects. We don't know the mix. All we know is that Kaplan, the bar review company, would prepare the questions for California. Now, I know your immediate question is, wait a minute, I think conflict of interest. Kaplan has agreed to stop providing a California bar review course in exchange for their $1 million plus a year contract to write these questions. There are so many unknowns about this, including what kind of questions, how good are they, what are they going to be like, that it is somewhat staggering. Functionally, they start with a question bank that looks a lot like ours because it's got a history going back to 1990 something. But I don't know what they're going to do. And there's a lot of rhetoric about making sure these questions are sound and quality and work right. But who knows? They haven't been tested in the real world. There's absolutely no ability to know if they would work or not work. So that's the proposal on the table. Now let me throw it up to you, Tracey. What's your reaction to that?
It's quite surprising. On the one hand, it's quite ambitious in a way that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because their testing of the questions and their sending out of the sample questions are overlapping. So it's hard for me to understand how the questions are valid and how the testing modality is viable until they actually have some trial runs with it. We couldn't really tell whether they are going to put in just some sample questions in their exam in February 2025 or whether they are expecting a complete overhaul in 2025. So I suggested to Jackson that he get some more direct information, and we're working on that. And he's got a couple of meetings scheduled with people more in the know about what's happening, and we will update you as we know. Functionally, you would still sit and take the exam the way you're used to taking it, but it could be longer. There could be more multiple choice questions. We don't know what the essay part of it is going to look like at all. So
Yeah,
I'm just kind of stunned by it.
And there's another part of this that's really interesting. California's running out of money. Their trust fund that covers the bar exam administration is running a huge deficit and will run out of money in the next year or two. And so one of the problems in California, if you're a California bar taker, you know this, is that there are multiple locations in which they give the test. And because they have to rent out space all over the state, and because they give the test to so many applicants, it's a huge expense to them. The reason they have to do that is because the NCBE requires all the jurisdictions in the country that give the MBE to do it in an open test center setting, and that's for security, right? Now, if you've been around for a while in the bar review world, you know that during COVID, we all went inside and took the tests from our homes. And some of you can remember not so fondly how miserable that experience was. The proctoring, the fact you couldn't have somebody at your door, you had to lock your door, you couldn't have anything else in the room, no books in your room, there couldn't be a bookshelf in your room. There was a ton of requirements. As part of this proposal, California is saying they would cease offering the test in large centers that with this new test starting in February of 2025, you would be able to take it either at home or in a small, like a Kaplan testing site, a small center. I don't know how that's going to work. You got thousands of people there. There's no way they can do that in small Kaplan test centers. So I think most people would take the test from home. It's in some ways very comforting to do it at home. In other ways, it was very difficult. And the technology was much more complicated and it has its own set of complications, to be sure. So you've got both of these things going on, changing the site and then changing the test. What happens to the first day of the exam? We assume it would stay the same with essays and performance tests because those have always been written by the Cal examiners. Would they potentially add a third day to the test to try and get some idea of the questions that they want to use? I don't know if that it's possible that that would happen. The thing that concerns me, Tracey, is if you're thinking about taking the California bar in February of 2025, now we've just played 52 card pickup, right? Who knows what you're supposed to study, what the exam's going to be, how it's testing or not testing. I think that's a fair statement.
Yes. If you were thinking about deferring to take the exam next February, if you can get prepared to take it this summer, we would suggest you take it this summer.
Absolutely.
Because it's a known
100%.
quantity. This also applies to Nevada. But Nevada will
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
tagging along behind California. What that says to me, Jackson, is there's a possibility that other states are going to also tag on to this idea and start jumping ship on NCBE. So it's something
Yeah.
that we are watching on a daily basis. We have plugins to all of the news sources about this, and Jackson watches this stuff like a hawk, and we will let you know what's going on. If you can be prepared to take the exam in July, or if we can help you get ready to take the exam in July, we suggest you do it.
Yeah. And I just got to tell you, if you're in Florida, keep a real close eye on this because I think Florida might be very close on California's heels. And I think, as Tracey alluded to, we may be seeing a schism here between the jurisdictions that stay with the NCBE and the ones that go off on their own and maybe take this Kaplan created test and use it. If Kaplan creates a test, there's no reason that they might not say, let's offer it in Florida, New York, Texas, other places. So we don't know that yet, but it's not impossible to see that potential or that possibility. So again, we are going to watch this really carefully. Bottom line today, the thing that I really want to emphasize that Tracey said, you should make every effort to take the bar exam in July of 2024. I think February of 2025 has suddenly become a huge wild card, and I would be very worried about what that could look like. We'll be prepared, whatever it is. I promise we'll get you prepared for it. But look, if you were thinking maybe I could take it in July, maybe I take it next February, I'd be more comfortable to push it back. Don't do that. Some of you have been deferring for years. Stop deferring. Take this exam in July of 2024 if you're registered for it. And of course, all this news comes out after the registration deadlines have hit in most jurisdictions. So there are going to be some people that are just caught, right? But this is not, if you are registered for July, stay in that July exam unless there's an absolute crisis that keeps you out of it.
Landscape.
Changing landscape. All right. Let's go ahead and turn to some student questions that we did get, because I think it's important to get a sense of where people are in their studies. And then we'll get to you, Tracey, and your kite with no tail. First question that we got, indicative of a lot of questions. I just take sample questions that kind of mirror what I'm seeing in my inbox. We got a lot of questions from students who said, I'm starting to retake my studies, but if I start now, what's the recommended hours a day that I should cover? And I would say at this point, 3 hours a day is about what you're looking at if you begin now, this middle of May date. This student said, is it too late to start my review for this July? Absolutely not too late at all. You have plenty of time. May is still a preliminary time, I think, in the bar exam calendar. The big box bar reviews won't start in most cases for another week or two. So you're actually ahead of the game just a little bit. So is it too late to start? No. But if you're thinking to yourself, I'll start in June, or God forbid, middle of June or late June, you are really putting yourself in a hole. This is the time to get started. And if you haven't chosen a bar review, this is the time to do that. And then we got a lot of questions, students asking about one-on-one coaching with me or with Tracey or with Amanda. If you are already in our course, there are upgrade links in your upgrade center to add those 8 coaching calls with me, 10 calls with Tracey or Amanda, or you could just do this 5-call package. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And if you need the link, just let us know. We'll be glad to get it for you. But again, I want to emphasize this is the time to start that coaching. Tracey, any thoughts that you've got about the 3 hours a day right now? I know you're doing our time management workshop. That sounds about right, doesn't it, at this stage?
It does. I would say either 1 3 hour block if you have the capacity to really focus in for 3 hours, or two 1.5 hour blocks. That's in addition, though, to some paraliminal work, some looking at your photo reading before you go to bed, maybe recording some of your mind maps before you go to bed and listening to that. So it's in addition to those non conscious brain types of things that we have for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the beauty of home study is you get to decide when you want to study and what kind of chunks of time. I would say that no more than 3 hours at a time is really what's optimum. I think when you start getting over 3 hours, it's hard to hold your focus. And the bar exam doesn't test in more than 3 hours at a time. It's a good chunk to work on. In that same vein, we got a question from a student who said, I'm just beginning lesson 7.4. I was looking over the remainder of the course, I think it's Florida, and I started to worry about not being able to finish everything. I've been doing 2 to 3 hours a night, plus 8 hours or more on the weekends. I'm at the 21% completion point right now. How am I doing? The answer is you're doing fine. 20% right now is a good number. It's a good benchmark. If you're in our course and progress bar, if you're around 20%, I think you're doing well. 2 to 3 hours a night plus 8 hours on the weekends, that's plenty of time. That gets you over that 20 hours a week that we're working for. This student had an interesting approach. They are working in a law office and they said, I've been staying at my desk from 5 to 8 or 8:30 after work to study so I don't get stuck in traffic. If you can close your door and not be distracted by all the other things going on in the office, I think that's a great idea. And then you get home, you have your dinner, chill for a while, then go to bed. That's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. The other point that I want to make is that this is incremental growth. Sometimes people try to chunk it too big. They try to get too much done. They say, I'm not going to do anything during the week. And then I'm going to go for 12 or 14 hours on Saturday and another 12 or 14 on Sunday. It's been my experience once you get over about 6 to 8 hours a day, you just really lose effectiveness. It's just hard to hold your focus, hard to keep your concentration. There's just too much fatigue, both physical and mental, that kicks in. So it's much better to do even an hour a day during the week and then some weekend time, or get up in the morning and do an hour before you go to work, or do an hour at lunch. The course is built in a way that you can break it into 1 hour segments pretty easily and just keep moving through it. I think that's part of it that we would recommend. Any comments that you've got, Tracey, to that?
Sure. This is not a cram test. This is a professional competency test. And so you have to find a rhythm that's sustainable over time. 14 hours working both days on the weekend is not sustainable over time. You might be able to do that one weekend, but then you blow yourself out, and chances are you're not going to do anything during the week. So the burnout factor is really important, and the sustainability factor is important. Once you get into law practice, it's the same way. You cannot put everything onto your weekend time. You have to learn a rhythm that works all week long. And when we're talking about bar exam prep in May, that's a very different discussion than bar exam prep in June and then again in July. And maybe, Jackson, you want to speak to that, how you would incrementally increase your hours in June and then July
Yeah.
looking up to the exam.
Yeah. I think that the idea is in May, you're 20 hours. As you get into June, you probably want to pick that up to 25 hours a week if you can do it. And then when you get into July, you stay at 25 for a while, and you might bump up for a week or two to 30 if it's possible. But we don't want you doing the most number of hours right before the exam. We'll actually tail off in the last 10 days or so and ask you to do fewer hours so that you come to the exam more refreshed and relaxed. But you can't do that unless you've been doing the work now. So future you will appreciate that present day you got underway and did the work. I know it sounds like we're always harping on this idea of don't procrastinate, but procrastination
Mhm.
really is one of the big problems here because I don't know a lot of people that really say, oh boy, I get to study for the bar exam today. I think it's interesting, but I've been doing this for 30 years. But you got to do it. And it doesn't go away. And some people think that they can just take a 30,000-foot view of this and they're going to be okay. And in this bar exam world, that's certainly not the case. You need to study, you need to get through the assignments. So when you hear us talking about that's important. Somebody said, I'm really amazed at how many gaps I had in my understanding of the substantive law. And then I started into your course and I realized that there are all these ideas that had never been clear to me before that are now becoming clear. And that's really given me some encouragement. I'll just tell you that most people that take this course have a reaction like that. They are hearing and learning things they didn't know before, but you have to have the time to absorb them. If you're just in a headlong rush at the end, it's really tough to do that. Give yourself the chance to take advantage of the training that we're offering. So,
Well, I
baby
think
steps for
the
sure.
other part of that is that we're trying to teach you to become relational with these concepts and with the way that you work with them. And that's why we emphasize the use of mind maps, for example, a visual representation of what you are learning. I remember when I was taking AP French in high school, I had AP Conversational French, and I thought I could just cram for the exams and do well because I did just in general. And I didn't do that well on those exams. And I went to talk to my French teacher and said, why isn't this working for me? He said, because you're not being relational with it. You're not learning a process. You're just trying to cram it all in and then spit it all out. But this is conversational French.
Yeah.
This is conversational bar prep. You can't just look at these things in isolation and be able to pick them out and use selective intuition. You've got to be able to relate.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're already studying, if you're working, congratulations. If you haven't started, consider this your daily reminder to get going, get started. All
Wake
right.
up call.
There you go. A student wrote and said, I was thinking about adding Amanda's MBE workshop and her MPT workshop and maybe some coaching calls. How do I do that? Again, as we said, you go to the upgrade center. The student said, is it worthwhile to add these workshops? The answer is yes, it is. If you know that you've got a deficiency in the MBE, these 2 sessions with Amanda are going to give you some really dedicated, directed practice on selective intuition. Same is true for the MPTs. If you're having trouble there, you do a couple of sessions with Amanda and she will walk you through the MPTs and the process and have you actually do some writing. And we've offering these workshops because we know that some people just say, that's the area of weakness for me. I don't need everything else, but I need that. So be sure to check that out. Again, if your weakness is in essay writing, then the upgrade and the 5 coaching calls or just simply getting into the course will be helpful to you. And then, of course, June's got her very popular Calming the Chaos mindset course. And June's not with us today. She's traveling. June has been teaching with me for 10 years almost. She is a certified mindset coach. She is brilliant at this stuff and she's got a great perspective. And so if you're dealing with test anxiety or stress or just feeling like a failure, she will do that work with you. And boy, we've seen so many changes in people after they've gone through that. Again, you can find that course in your upgrade center inside the course. And the last of our workshops. So we've talked about essay writing, we've talked about MPTs, we've talked about MBE, we've talked about calming the chaos. The last of those is a 1 session workshop called time management. And Tracey, you're working with the time management workshop now. The goal here in time management is to help you as a student figure out how many hours to spend and where to put them between now and the exam date. And it's really just directed scheduling. It's directed putting together your daily schedule. There's no magic to it, is there, Tracey? It's just put it in and then live with it, stick with it.
There's no magic to setting it up, but for some people, it gives them a sense of security that they really need. We get a lot of questions saying, oh my gosh, do I have enough time? Am I going to be ready? How am I going to be ready? This is an opportunity for you to work with me. And me has the non anxious presence to help you get a calendar and figure it out And then you've got some accountability because you have had this class and I'm going to make you make a pledge about it. And I think it'll help you as you go forward into this exam to know that you have enough time and to know when you have free time and when you have playtime and when you have study time. And a lot of you are working or you're a full-time parent. Maybe you're caring for elderly parents. There's all kinds of life things that come into the middle of this too. So we'll take a look at all of those things. You can do this.
I would again encourage you, if you're struggling at all with the scheduling, half hour with Tracy will clean a lot of that up, give you an objective third party to look at it, and then help you walk away with something actionable. Check that out as well. All right. I think that gets us through most of the questions we got this week. Good to see people are starting underway. A lot of people wanting to upgrade. In fact, as we've been talking today, we've had some people already sign up for the 5-call coaching package. So it's going to be when the clock runs out, or if capacity runs out, you're going to get shut out. You're going to be really disappointed. So make sure that you check that out.
Yeah, I want to say something about that too.
Yeah.
Don't sell your prep short. We are giving these 5 calls for $300, but for some of you, it is very obvious that you need double that and maybe beyond. And we have payment plans for that. There's going to be some of you that we're going to be looking at after 3 sessions and saying, you're not going to get this in 5. This isn't enough. Be prepared to invest in yourself. This is half of the exam. So you've got to have it right going in.
Yeah. And I think that's a good transition. Talk about your tail with no kite.
No kite with no tail.
Oh, kite with no tail. Tail with no kite. Oh,
You said tail with no kite, but that's okay. I like to use metaphors, and my metaphor for the week happened actually as I was taking a break from weeding my yard, which never seems to end. The other day, I saw some boys out there and they had made a kite. They had made a diamond shaped kite, and they were all excited to go because it was pretty blustery and they were all excited to go fly this kite. They hooked it all up to the string and they decided who was going to run with the kite. They started running, and sure, the kite went up in the air. And then just as quickly, it rolled around and it got all crazy and fell to the ground. And of course, it broke. So they were very upset. They worked with it a little bit more. Somebody else ran with it. Same thing happened. About then, one of the boys' grandfathers came along and was watching from a distance. And so I went over and talked to the grandfather and I said, they're never going to get this kite up unless they have a tail on it. And he said, yeah, that's what I'm going to tell them. Trying to fly a kite without a tail results in the kite spinning and rolling around a lot because it makes the kite unstable. So if you add a tail to a kite, it helps the kite fly more stably by adding some needed mass and drag, which pulls the kite back, puts it back in balance in the direction the wind is going into the lower back area of the kite. I was reading after that, and here's a picture of the kite without its tail. And this was shortly before I was going to go crashing to the earth. It seemed to me that it was very apropos to what you all are trying to do. You have this body of work that Jackson and other coaches and now I have put together for you. And that's the kite. And that is a solid mass and it's got crossbars and it's perfectly balanced. It can either sit on the ground or sit in your closet and you don't use it at all. Or you can go out in the wind and try to run really fast and get the kite up in the air. And it might get in the air for a little bit, but it's going to start rolling around and it's going to crash to the earth. What we have is the tail. And the tail are the things we've been talking about, the resources that we have for you, the support that we have for you, the balance that we have for you, so that your kite can stay up in the air and be a beautiful thing for all to see. Henry David Thoreau, in his famous work, Walden, says this: if one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams and endeavors to live the life that they have imagined, they will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. Now think about the kite for a minute. If you put the kite together so that it's balanced and you put a nice tail on it, and then you start running into the wind in the direction of your dreams, and you think about and you hope for this kite going way high in the air and delighting everyone and being very successful, then what happens is almost magical, as Jackson was saying. It's almost magical when a kite actually does what we want it to do. And then the colors are brilliant, the tail is brilliant, everything is balanced, and the magic just unfolds ahead of you. But it is a package deal. You can't just take the materials that we have for you and not add the tail to them. And you can't take the tail and not have the package that goes with it. It has to be balanced. So that's what we're talking about with your time management. That's what we're talking about with workshops that we have. Every one of those is a little bit of the tail. And the coaching is also a part of the tail. So that when you get to the bar exam, you are flying high into the wind and showing your colors off for everyone who's around to see them.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracey. Hope people will take that to heart. This is a great time. It's a time when you can be optimistic. It's a time when your studies get underway and you start to feel that surge and you learn new things. And all you got to do is get started and then put the tail on the kite. I think that's a great analogy. So thank you for that. Listen, we're going to let you guys run and get started. We do want you to take advantage of all these resources. We'll keep you informed on these changes, potential changes in the bar exam landscape, and look forward to sharing more questions and more success stories with you in the days and weeks ahead, and to getting into the nitty-gritty of your studies and working on your writing and all of the aspects of the work, whether it's time management or mindset, and making sure that you have all the tools you need to be successful on the next exam. Thanks for being with us, Tracey. Appreciate it. We will see Amanda in June next week. And we thank all of you for being with us today. And we'll see you next Wednesday. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.